Thanks for joining us. Well, now Jerry's here. We're ready to start. And Jerry, do you know Jane?
No. Oh, Jane. Hi, Jane.
Jane. I'll let you introduce yourself. Hold on, although you're muted.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good. I live in Roanoke, Virginia. I am an artist and a musician, and I am just here to learn more about the process of doing public art in Roanoke.
And cool. you might have seen Jane is in Radar Rose.
Yeah. Very cool.
And Jerry Rogers runs Artemis, our poetry. Well, how many years? Let me let you describe and tell how many years you've been doing this.
No, it makes me too old if I tell you. 42 years, 43 years. Been doing it. I mean, on and off. You know, a lot of different people have joined in, but yeah.
And just came out with your last beautiful issue with art and poetry. Am I holding it right side up? Yeah. Art and poetry, full color. How many poets? Yeah, how many poets in this one?
We got about 150 poets, artists. Wow. Yeah, we're trying to scale down, but it never works. We get such good work.
Jerry, I have to tell you, I've been in Artemis several times, and I thank you so much for those opportunities. And I'm getting ready for a submission for your October call. And I just wanted you to, I moved here in 1990, and I went and had dinner at the Pine Tavern in Floyd, and I ran across the first time I ever seen an Artemis copy. And I was like, this has got to be a cool place to live if this is coming out of here.
It is a cool place to live. In fact, that's where we do live, and I publish out of Artemis, out of Floyd, not out of Artemis. But yeah,
that's fantastic.
Where'd you move from?
I moved here from Richmond, Virginia. But yeah, we used to play at the Pine Tavern and back in the day, and I love it up there.
Pine Tavern, yeah, great place. Wonderful,
indeed.
Wonderful. Nice to finally meet you.
No, you don't have your last name up. And the minute he said Jerry Rogers, I was like, oh, holy crap! Wow.
Well, we're gonna dive in, and I'll introduce our fourth square, David Sheldon. And let me just share my screen real quick, and then let's see. All right, can you see that? Is it showing up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If it looks right, we'll roll with it.
You need to pull it out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, I see. It actually really matters where this is on your screen. It's interesting. Okay, now can you see it better?
Yep. Good.
Okay. All right. So this is I believe this is our fifth. I'm losing count. Our fifth in the series, and it's a Roanoke artist series, and we're doing it every Tuesday night. And our goals for this are really, well, we like doing these things in person where we can have a glass of wine and network and connect people. But short of that, we thought, let's go ahead as the Roanoke Arts Commission and get some information out about the collection, about our calls, about how we can change them. Let's use this opportunity to get input from artists. Let's celebrate some of the work that's been done recently with the goals of, creating more opportunities for artists and more projects that work even better for the community. And we really do believe in collectively building this. So we can build it as we're doing it. We can build it together. And soon it's going to be time to redo our arts and cultural plan for the city. And we really hope we have a lot of artist input in that. And part of what we believe is that we need artist input in everything, whether it's whatever kind of problem we're trying to solve in the community. A creative approach will help us do it in a different way, see issues differently. So it doesn't matter if we're looking at homelessness, if we're looking at avenues to better health and wellness. You know, there are certainly lots of ways that we can get artists involved. And I've got 3 more after this. Tonight we're focusing on Guidance Tower, and we've already covered who's here. And I'm gonna, you know, really generally introduce David Sheldon, but then we'll let him talk about himself and his philosophy, the way he approaches work. And then we're going to talk about, we'll show the temporary exhibit or temporary piece that we have from David in the community right now. And we're also going to talk about Guidance Tower, our most recent sculptural addition in the public art collection. And David's got, I don't know which career he's on, if he's counting them, but I know he had a career, and Jerry, you'll be interested in this, career in book illustration and in publishing, and which we already identified. Jerry's has a similar long career. So I'll let David, why don't I, and you're coming out of North Carolina, and you're in your painting studio, and I'm gonna quit sharing the screen and put the attention on you and let you introduce yourself a little bit further and talk about your philosophy.
Okay, well, thanks, Doug. And I do well with question and answer. So but I got the general question there is about my basic background here first. So I'll go with that. And I think that, obviously all of us, I'm not going to go back too far, but obviously our childhoods have a huge impact on what we're doing today. I firmly believe that, and I was very fortunate, at least for my particular path in life, to grow up right outside of Washington, D.C. And my dad would just haul us down to the Smithsonian museums every other weekend, so I really fell in love with the whole dynamic of the museum world and dioramas, and the National Gallery of Art had a big, modern art collection and a historical collection. And as I got older, that became kind of like my sanctuary down there. I'd take the subway down and I would just hang out in the Smithsonian museums all day. And, and it's kind of funny, as a grad student, I even got myself an internship in the Smithsonian model making department. So I was thinking about possibly really taking another leap. And I was in grad school for fine art at the University of Maryland. I had done my undergraduate at Rhode Island School of Design, which was a big kind of artsy art school, and I got some wonderful experiences in that. But I wanted to do something a little different for grad school, and the University of Maryland had a really strong graduate program with some really dynamic local artists, as well as a couple of big guys and gals. Anne Truitt is a internationally recognized artist, and she was a big draw for me in going to the graduate school there. But I tried the Smithsonian intern model making, and I was so excited. I was finally there, and I had the guy I worked with, and I soon found out about the glacial pace of government work. It's kind of like, we were going to do this, but it's going to take a while. And that was like completely the opposite, or it is the opposite of my personality. It's like, well, I just like go. So it was kind of like a living hell for me for like 6 months, but I got a good idea of what it was like. So, okay, that's not for me, So but the funny thing was, in grad school, I started doing all these environments with, I would take aquariums and I would stack them, and I would make whole walls and towers of aquariums, and I would make underwater sculpture by like taking pantyhose and filling it up with sand. I would make like these lumpy sculptures underwater. I would make these like cocoon shapes, and I would have the full pumps going and stuff. And that was stuff I did as a kid. I had all these aquariums as a kid and stuff. So that was still, like, I'm still a kid, So, so I was making all these aquariums and stuff, and that actually brought me a lot of attention. And I got a grant, and I had the head art critic for the Washington Post was really a champion of my work, and she boosted me a lot and got me into some shows, and she even recognized me as best in show for this one big sculpture show, which looking back on it now, I mean, wow, there were some pretty awesome sculptors in that show. So I was pretty honored to get that. But it was only because I was so out there. I mean, it was very avant-garde work, you know, so.
I love it.
But I finally, and my big dream was to get that big gallery show and a big, huge solo gallery show. And I finally, and I should say as a side note too, along with that internship at the Smithsonian, I also happened to luck into working for James Sanborn, who was an international sculptor, and
Right.
he had a big commission at the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and it's still a very sort of infamous sculpture because it has this embedded code in it that has still to this day not been solved. He got this like genius code maker to make. He made these different levels of code that are embedded in the piece, and the last code is super hard to break, and they still haven't. There's a whole club at the CIA that attempts to break this code, you know. So it's called Kryptos, Kryptos, and it's a huge monumental sculpture that's in the courtyard of the CIA and also on the outside grounds. And so that was really my first exposure to public art on a huge scale, you know. And it was carting around 12,000 pound granite slabs on a forklift, and I mean he did the whole 9 yards with just like, and he was a big guy. He was like practically 7 feet over, you know, he was like a foot and a half over me or something. I forget how it was pretty interesting. But so I lucked into that, and I finally got my big show, and I'll abbreviate this a little bit. I finally got my big art show, and I was starting a little family, and I saw my little son running around my opening to my art show, and it sort of struck me like, oh, wow, I don't think I can support this growing family of mine by being an artist. So I kind of freaked out, and I dropped the whole fine art career. I went up to New York because on the side, I had always done illustration work. So my father was an editor for a magazine. I'd always done the joke page for his magazine, and since I was like 12, so I always had illustration work going. So we moved the whole family up to New York, and I had a children's book portfolio ready to go, and it was the right move. All the doors kind of opened, and it was a wonderful adventure. And I got an agent, and as it turned out, the first books I was actually able to author and illustrate and get published myself were based on scientists like Barnum Brown, who discovered the first Tyrannosaurus Rex, and William Beebe, who was the first one down into the deep seas of the ocean. So I was still connected to that museum, explorer, and I still see art making as really an exploration, you know. And so I guess this segues into the philosophy, right? So the philosophy for me is art is an exploration. And you know, it's kind of funny because I was just thinking about this when I was a younger artist. It was like, what can you do for me, you know, to like get my art off the ground, you know? And now I'm an older artist. It's like, what can I do for you, you know? And that's really my philosophy today is how can I use my art to good purpose, you know, to serve communities, to serve whoever needs my particular talents, you know, my vision, you know. So that has helped me a lot in my public art. And you know, and it's only been about 5 or 6 years. I was teaching at Brevard College in we moved the whole family down to Asheville. We had lived in New York and Brooklyn for about 10 years, and after the children's book career was off the ground, we said we were going to raise these kids where there's some green grass and stuff. We lived in a beautiful location. It was a beautiful park, but we chose Asheville because it was you know, it had the mountains and it had an art community. So we took the kids down there, and I started working at Brevard College, and they have a little sculpture department. And I was watching these kids welding the sculptures, and I was like, and we have a really great sculptor instructor, Kyle Lusk, who has a lot of work around town and nationally. And I saw the kids doing it, and I was like, I want to do that. So I just started like picking it up after school, and I got very driven. And I'm like the kind of person, once I get something going, I go for it. You know, I just would keep going for it. And when I was a kid, like I'd take those subway rides down to the mall in DC, and I would see like empty lots, and I would see like a sculpture there. You know, I was like, oh, here's a, you know, I call them like plop sculptures. You know, it's like something that would go right in that little spot that would make it beautiful and stimulating. So, so gradually, I've developed it. And the Roanoke piece, that is, Guidance Tower is my 4th public art piece. And I was really thrilled to get the assignment, the job. I like to call them a job, you know. I like to see it as a job, and I got this job. And as Doug mentioned, I had gotten the temporary acceptance of my other piece, Oracle, which is down there in Elmwood Park, and that was a nice stepstone to getting this particular commission for the Guidance Tower. Because you know, Doug was there. I was sort of saying, we were talking about sculptures, and I said, well, you know, you can go down to Elmwood Park and look at what I do. You know, it's right there. So, so that's it right there. And you know, folks, I didn't hear back whether people went down there. Doug would know. I mean, but went down and actually looked at my piece or not. But I understand there was a number of people that are actually presented there in Elmwood that applied for the commission. So there was a number of us. So I was really thrilled to get the job. But it's like I said, it's something I've really wanted to do. So it's something that I put a lot of time and effort in. And so I took the 4-hour drive up from Asheville to the actual spot. Took a lot of photographs of the Blue Hills communication, you know, where the spot was located, knowing that I could make my maquettes and put them in Photoshop and really give an idea of what the sculpture was going to look like in that location. So
Great. You mentioned the temporary exhibits, and let me just, I'll butt in here a little bit. You know, we do we've done 5 of them. That's the one that your piece is in now is with themed Roanoke Rising, and we're going to put a call out in 2021 we're going to put a call out this month, at the end of this month, I think, for the 2021 round, and these would go in May. And we do these temporary exhibits. We've done them for a couple of reasons. You know, initially we did them to kind of test the waters and see what the community liked, what they responded to. So if we're able to have an artist create a temporary piece or lease a piece from an artist, that gives us a chance to try things on. But additionally, we are finding that it introduces artists to Roanoke as well. So we put out these air calls. Then, as David mentioned, when we did put out the call for this piece, we had several who had responded and been selected for air or had first heard about the community through air. So it's important that way as well. And then I've got some images of the site and the way these projects work. The city, while we're funding this through the percent for art budget, not every building, and that means 1% for most capital projects, goes into public art. It doesn't mean that we have to use the money that comes from a building for that art. That said, when they did the design for it, they said, hey, we're going to put a little bump out here in the park, like toward the parking lot, that's going to be perfect for some art, and you can do a pad here. So they said that right there, public art. And this building is the communication center. It belongs to a kind of cooperative board that is combined with the city of Roanoke for their 911 services. and then 811, Virginia's Utilities, the place, the folks you call before you dig. And so they were coming together, and we went out and visited as well, because this site, it's a beautiful site out by Blue Hills Country Club, but it's not right down in downtown. So a lot of people hadn't actually been out there before. So, you know, we went out there and visited and looked at it, and as we put together the call. And also, and there's Charlie Anderson, he's a former city architect, and we were there on site, and there's Janet Carty and Megan Sharp. Megan and Janet were on the collections committee. Janet's still chair of the collections committee. And on the far left is Scott Crawford, and Scott Crawford is the president now of Virginia 811, and he had been the chair of the Arts Commission. And that's kind of how this project, part of how this project really started, folks started thinking about it. And of course, we choose a selection panel. And well, I should say here too, that this group helped develop the theme for the call. And we said the theme for this call around 811, 911 would be about, you know, honoring the work that goes on inside the building. And so safety, partnership, and care were three of the themes that we put out and that they put into the call and said, hey, artists, how would you respond to this theme? And then we always pull together a selection panel that incorporates, we have to have arts professionals on it. We have to have city staff. We have to have stakeholders. You know, if it's a neighborhood, we want to have neighborhood stakeholders. And, you know, we were really fortunate to be able to work with Patrick Shaw Cable before he passed away. Scott Crawford was on it. Catherine Devine, a local artist, was on it. Jeannie Fishwick, the Arts Commission representative. Luke Pugh with City Engineering. Sonia Roman, who manages the E911 services, and then our purchasing representative who was on it. So this group, you know, we put the call out and we posted it on Cafe, and we got to get the responses back. And then this group reviewed them, scored everybody, and they said, hey, let's have a phone call, which was something that Tony in purchasing said, yeah, I think we should interview these folks. And when we interviewed them, I just remember being impressed with David's responses, and he said he treats this like a job. Calls it a job. Very super professional. Just really we felt like we were in good hands. And this call was, you know, I'm pretty new in this position, so I feel like I really want to deliver. If they say a building is going to be ready in February, and this was November or so, I guess, when we were, you know, going through the process, I was really anxious about, okay, well, we need to have that art ready when that building's ready to go. It's going to be ready. And of course, the building got pushed back, but David delivered. We gave him a tight timeline, and he really delivered. So I'm eager to hear him talk a little bit about his process now for what he proposed for us. And I'll have this. There's the image of what he proposed, and I've got some other images that he'd like me to share too, which I can pull up. But do you want to start talking about it a little bit with this image, David?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I was. What's the best way to? All of a sudden, I went blank.
Well, I can pull up the other images as well. There might be one that's. Well, I guess. How do you get started when you first start? Yeah, what do you draw it out?
That's a good way to start. So to start with, you know, you mentioned call for entry, and there's a couple other. CodaWorks is a public art place, and it's called publicart.org is another site. You know, in public art, like you were saying, I mean, public art is booming right now. You know, I mean, every town is wanting to boost their cultural, you know, really enliven the community environment. And so, I mean, you know, there's the temporary exhibits that a lot of towns are now initiating. I just had a sculpture go from Coral Springs, and now it's in Decatur, Georgia, you know, from one art walk to another. And And it's a kind of nice, it's a bit of a win-win situation where an artist can put a big giant sculpture somewhere for a year or two and get a little stipend for it, and the city gets a nice piece for their space. And it's a great, I would encourage like local artists like to Roanoke, for instance, that temporary space is a wonderful stepping stone to something more if you want to get into the public art game on an even deeper level, because it gives you a lot of experience. I've done quite a number of those temporary ones now, and that really gave me that hands-on kind of, okay, here's a big sculpture, it's going to go into space, and that initial taste of what that's like. And there is something so satisfying about having some big thing out there that you feel like you're directly helping the community, in the environment, that particular environment. And I think what I have learned from my experience with it so far is that it's really important for me to not spin my wheels. I remember like that sculptor I worked for, James Sanborn, he'd always tell me, don't spin your wheels, don't spin your wheels, meaning make sure you know what you want and go for it. Like my focus can't be every single public art job, obviously. It has to be something that's in line with what I'm already doing, my particular interest, and so my work, I was doing a series called Skyworks, which I call have a kind of a NASA aesthetic. They're very sort of space agey looking, and I like to think of them as sort of more objective art. They're very I call them non-sentimental. They're very much just about shape and form and proportion and the way things relate to each other. And hopefully there's a sense of music in them, because I believe music is what makes the universe. When you look at the universal laws, this music, right? So if I can touch into that with my sculpture, then I feel like I'm on the right track. So how does that relate to like a public art piece? So obviously that completely cuts out, well, we want a picture of, or we want a sculpture of James Madison, well, I'm not doing a sculpture of James Madison, so I'll show, and so and as a way of example, I'll show you this one. And this is one I did for, I don't know if you can guess by looking at it, it's really hard to get there's a book there and stuff coming out of the book. Let me see back here further. It's a mirror image. But I did this for the city of, this was a maquette for the city of Winston-Salem. And it's basically a book opening up and all this stuff, like Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll was in Winston-Salem, and there's Thomas Wolfe's Angel, and these different parts. So I put a lot of work into this maquette for that job, which I did not get. but that was pushing the envelope for me in terms of subject matter, and kind of like doing something representational, like with a little Alice in Wonderland figure and stuff like that. Like, to me, that's going to the very edge of what I can do in terms of a theme, right? So if I see a theme for public art that's more like, it can be very, very simple. We want just a beautiful, abstract, engaging sculpture. That's one. I could probably go for that. Or, so for the community, and also there's a lot of times there's universities, schools that have a science lab. That's one for me. I'll apply to that. Science labs, something that has to do with science, something that has to do with space technology. There's a way of kind of getting your focus to where what you're doing as an artist specifically can match up with what's going on with the needs of that community, right? So for Guidance Tower, you all had this really nice looking facility, the communications building, and I'm very attracted to, a modern environment, for my work. My work is modern, so I'm thinking, okay, a modern building, that's great. The whole communications aspect of it appealed to me, and the themes of partnership and communication and safety, that was the challenge, that was the challenge of it. But I thought I'm going to go for it and see what I can do with that theme, so that's why I applied. That's why I jumped through the first hoops, so to speak. I think there was only was it just a call for qualifications? I can't remember, but usually, so a lot of times with public art, they'll ask for just your qualifications, whether you can do it or not, and then they'll ask you for a proposal. I can't remember if you asked for a proposal right away or.
We did this since we had such a short timeline. We actually asked for proposals, and you provided us two. And
Yeah, I did.
I remember the panel discussing both options, and they really liked. They settled on this one and really liked it. But I remember them considering both of them too. So they were both strong. Yeah.
I have that one here too. That's the well, it's funny because I wanted to show this a little show and tell. Yeah, this was the second proposal, and this looks more figurative, directly figurative, and it's standing right on the ground. And so I saw the two services, 811 and 911 is two people, So I thought the idea of two people entwined, right? So there is that. So immediately there's this idea of partnership right in there, and so that's, and as I was sort of saying on the call, that abstract art is great in that way because it can take all these different themes and it can kind of be inside the piece itself without being overtly descriptive, So a piece like, so this was one try. So I do a lot of work, whether I get the job or not, right? So because I have to kind of think in 3D, and so I make these maquettes to kind of they're almost like three-dimensional sketches, So I do sketch on paper, but I also sketch directly with just cutting out shapes, right? And I have done this one, and I think you can see.
What material is that you're working in?
Plywood, just thin plywood. So I make a whole base, and they're like, it's sort of them, just a rough wood model. And so I'm playing around with the 3 dimensions there. And what's interesting is that I had done this piece, and as you can see, there's a little difference to it. This is the final piece, but I think you see the main difference is on the top there, right? Mm-hmm. Like this one looks more like a trident or something because I've changed the angle there. And there's some very different subtle differences. Like this one is a little thicker on the bottom. This one's thinner. So this is kind of like the artist me that wants to do something really daring. And I'm going to make it super thin down there. A lot of my sculptures, I want them to feel like they're almost floating off the ground, right? So I this particular model I had way down super thin, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, 10 feet, 15 feet high, how structurally sound is that actually? So I got a little scared, right? So I redid the whole maquette, and I made it thicker, a lot thicker here, right? And even thicker here, and then I changed the top there to be more in line with the sketch, or initial sketch I'd done, right? And I think to me that simple little shape like that is more of a helping hands kind of shape. It's like, how can I help you? So that added to, again, the idea of this as being a service figure, right? So again, not something that's blatantly, but it can be subtly implied in the shape, right? And then also the idea of the arrows started becoming important because, I can use that as a symbolic of the 811, which is diving down under the ground looking for these utility lines, right? So there's that nice element of that added into it as well, right? So all of a sudden it started coming together, and also the added element of lights. You all wanted lights, so this was the first time I was adding lights to a sculpture, and so I had my little lights set up initially, and I had to kind of like think about how it's going to like light through the sculpture, so you can kind of, with a 3-dimensional model, you can kind of see how those lights are going to go. And what I do after I make my maquette and I'm happy with it finally is then I have to take all those little shapes, all the individual shapes, And I have to, what I've done now is I usually photograph them as I go. And I have to, this is very old school into new school, is like I take those shapes and then I have to outline them all. And I put them into the computer and I vectorize them all. So I turn them into vectored shapes on the computer. And then I have a guy down in Florida who's my AutoCAD guy, Josh. He's this young guy who knows what he's doing with the AutoCAD. I do not. So Josh and I will get on a desk and work together on it. I think there's the other image of the actual guidance tower. It'll show you. He can take all those shapes and we can basically put it together like a model airplane in the virtual environment. That's me actually cutting out the final finished shapes. So after everything, what's that?
What's the material? Is that metal or wood?
That's aluminum. So yeah, so the final piece was aluminum, and I had done 2 previous pieces in aluminum, so I was happy with working with that material. If it had been steel, for instance, it would have been a little cheaper, but it would have been 3 times as heavy. So it would have been horrific to work with, So I tend to like to work mainly with just myself and 1 or 2 other helpers. So aluminum is great material to work with because it's super light. I mean, I can lift those pieces myself. But Doug, is there the other picture of that tower in the 3D environment?
Yeah, I think so. Let me find my way to. Yeah. Well, let's see. Is this the one? Well, I'm not sure this is the one. Is this the one you're looking for?
No, first one. Those are little wood maquettes. But I have, there we go. Yeah, so this is actually just a still. Like there's actually, you can go into this program and you can literally go all the way around this 3-dimensionally. You can flip it over. You can look at it in different ways so that you can actually pinpoint where you want to put those light holes, for instance. You can take things away, subtract them. It's funny because I had started out, as I said, kind of, and what's interesting about the AutoCAD program is you can also, he can do engineering tests in that. So he can throw 100 miles an hour of wind at it and see how it does, So as we're working on it, I shaved off a little bit. I had made it too thick where I didn't feel like it was really beautiful anymore. I felt it was like it was too wide, and so for me, like, there was an aesthetic consideration. I wanted it to be more beautiful, and more beautiful meant shaving off a few inches off of that, right? So we did that there. He was able to just go in there and shave it off, So it's really interesting process for me because there's no way at this stage in the game I'm going to go and learn AutoCAD. It's a kind of a very counterintuitive program, at this stage of the game. I hear there are these computer programs where you can go in there and work intuitively and make shapes like you're, a god. But most programs are, okay, this X plus Y is 9 inches. This has to be to this scale, and there's no way I could work that way. That just completely stifles the creativity. So I'm still very much work old school, and this is something that can be imparted to local artists too that might be hesitant about the process. Is it's not something I can do alone. It's definitely I'm a group project today. It's not just me, right? So that's a good thing because then how can I get what I need translated to something that'll last outside? How can I? So that would be if I was gonna kind of give anybody some suggestions for getting into it, is thinking about how can my work translate into something that's permanent, which for the most part is usually metal, right? So how can what I do, if I really want to do public art, I'm going to need to think about material that is durable and is going to handle 100 mile per hour wind and hail, and I had a piece out in Colorado very similar to this, 20 feet high, and I was nervous as heck about it. And a week after we installed, they had like the most ferocious wind and hailstorm they'd had in like a few years. She said, the art coordinator there, and she said, "But your work held up fine." so I was super relieved, But so the aspect of using the computer to somehow translate your work into something that can be, and I think you see that a lot. As I said, there's a lot of popularity now with public art in towns, right? And I'll go to towns. I'm closest to Greenville, and the Greenville has a wonderful public art program, and they have downtown Greenville has got some pretty amazing artwork and sculptors, Brian Hunt Fountain and Joel Shapiro's sculpture, and they have some other local artists as well. And you can see that they've tapped into computer laser cutting, and that's what is really driving a lot of artists to get into the public art realm is computer laser cutting, because you can get any kind of, you can draw something and they'll cut it out with a computer, right? So then I might think, I like shapes and I like patterns in my work. I'm an artist that uses cats a lot. You can draw a cat out and they'll cut it right out for you, so you can, there's an artist here in Nashville who does cats and dogs, and he'll have it cut out, the shape cut out, and like a little bone shape cut out in the middle of the dog or something, like there's really creative ways to use laser cutting, and you just need to find the people that can help you to get that done, so.
And you've hit on exactly why we're doing this series and why we're focusing on this Elmwood Art Walk call, specifically hoping to encourage local artists to experiment this way, and in collaboration too. We've got the resources we need here. We've got creative businesses, we've got creative artists, we know how to do things. And when you submitted for this, all three of the finalists were doing exactly the same thing, and they're all very really good artists who figured out how to do the CNC, those computer numbers with the fabricator to take the work that they're doing, however they develop their original image or the original concept, whether they're carving it or if they're if they're using photography or however they're doing it, and then being able to bring it to the public art scale. And Anne talked about that last week about how her, when she first did the Trojan dog, how it was a singular process with, she's the artist working on it. And then when she worked with the fabricator, how collaborative it came, and she spoke about, really enjoying that process as well.
And we also have our online help, YouTube, which for me, YouTube is like, I don't know what I would do without YouTube, right? You can plug in laser cutting art, you can plug in, making steel sculptures, whatever it is that you want to do, fix the drain or something in your bathroom. But you can also, as an artist, you can utilize YouTube to learn about AutoCAD, to learn about just about anything in terms of making large scale art, so it's a really great resource too for translating your work into something larger, more durable. So,
well, let me show a couple more images, and then we'll wrap this up. And thank you. We have to show some images of the site with the piece in it. We can't get away without doing that. There's an installation shot.
We were very fortunate that, and I like deadlines, so I was all about like, well, let's get it done. 6 weeks, we'll do this, So that's a boon for me. I'm definitely not the kind of person that needs like a lot of time to do something. I prefer like deadlines, right? That's like the job aspect of it. So the fact that the pandemic started basically like the end of January, mid-January, end of January, and we were supposed to install the sculpture. When was that? March, I think mid-March, right? Yeah. And it was like all of a sudden it was like, whoops, hold on, like how are we going to do this? And I was sweating bullets because I had this 15-foot high sculpture in my back, and I was like, what am I going to do with this thing if I can't install it, you know? So we were very nervous, as you know, Doug. And fortunately, because the site is so removed from the downtown of Roanoke, it helped us to be able to get the go ahead and install it, because we had space to social distance and to do it safely. So that was a huge,
Yeah, I tell you, from your presentation to your the concept, the confidence, the very professional way you worked with the panel, your confidence and your ability to deliver, all of it makes a big difference. I've told people just what a great experience it was working with you on this. And Jane wanted to know what silver paint you use on your maquettes.
So I use, what I'll do is I'll coat them first with a primer of just some automotive white paint, Rust-Oleum, and then that'll kind of bring out the silver more. And then I'll use silver chrome paint, right? So that'll give it a kind of a really, depending on what kind of effect you want. Like exploring is the name of the game, right? So exploring, so I tried this one has a kind of a bronze, there's a bronze paint, so you can spray it bronze and have your bronze look, you know. And so there's all different kinds of, just go in there to your Home Depot or your Lowe's and check it out, experiment. I even do a lot of finishing with I'll do copper, patina kind of greens and blues. I use actual copper sometimes, and sometimes I'll just faux finish some steel to look, copperish. So it's a fun playing with the color and stuff. It's of course with like Anne's. What did she use for her Trojan dog? You said she used marine paint and stuff like that, right?
Plywood and marine paint. Yeah, marine. But that paint, when the maquette behind you, when it was turned a little bit, it was capturing the light the same way that your completed sculpture captures the light. I was watching it behind you. It's a little different now, but as you turn it, you can really see the same effect of what you accomplished on the site.
It's really cool what just a neutral color will do, because my Skyworks pieces that are white, I'll take them up on the Parkway. We're 15 minutes away from the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I'll take this white sculpture, and it's amazing what the sunset will do with that white. It'll suck in all that violet and orange, and it just looks amazing. So it is really amazing to see what surfaces will do with sunlight. And in this case, this was the first one, like I said, where I'm using actual light. So it's really interesting to take, and I'm really dying to do another sculpture with embedded light, I'm really hooked on that light now, make that light fly up through the sculpture. I've got all, ideas of how to shoot light, into the sculpture and stuff. So it's really fun how things open up to other things,
And that light was important to us because, at the folks who are working out there, it's a 24-hour facility, and if they're on 12-hour shifts, they're making shift change. They're seeing it at all hours. So we wanted it to be, a kind of a joy for everyone out there. Here are the two images. I won't show this as a video, but I won't show it as a video because it comes out so choppy.
Well, I should say too, what was really interesting about this particular job was the fact that that beam of light to me became very much a part of 911-811 theme. That idea of it being a beacon of hope, a beacon of help and hope. So the light actually became as much a part of the sculpture as the actual physical elements of it. So it was really, I love the way that the light became part of the theme.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Yeah. And it's not only the light, there, look at that. Look at how it's catching that light, just the daylight. The finish that you have on it just really works super well, that more kind of vertical, rather than a kind of a busier finish. It makes it really. Oops, sorry.
Well, it was funny that happened that way because Oracle, I had said I'll probably do it like Oracle, and Oracle has this spaghetti. You see that a lot with steel sculpture, is that the artist will take the grinder and the polisher, and it makes a really nice, energetic surface. But I was feeling like for this particular piece, I did that at first, and I thought it just wasn't feeling right. It just didn't feel like again, going back to the theme that this was going to be a piece for tired workers sometime, for workers that maybe needed a break visually. They're not going to be happy about this very energized surface, right? So it was really interesting in the way I almost began to just slow down, and it became this very meditative, almost shimmering of the surface, So it was really interesting again how serving the theme and the specific location helped to make that come into being, So it was just trying to be in tune with what the needs were for that particular site, So, and I was thrilled when it started coming out that way. I was jumping up and down. I brought my kids out and I said, "Look at the surface now," because they were saying, "Dad, it's too busy," And I was like, "Well, that's the way I do it," And they kept, and my kids are great because they don't hold back, They tell me what they think, And they're like, "Dad, that is just too busy," So I'm so glad they did because I pushed it, and then we got to that surface, which it is now, which is nice. Yeah.
Well, I consider it completely successful, and there's a shot too, standing out there as the sun's setting. It vibrates. It really comes to life. I think it's like I said, completely successful. And we're at an hour. We're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna see first. Well, first I'll show this. And I'll say next time we're going to go through the whole process of what it takes to get art in place. It'll probably be a shorter session, but we'll go through it from A call to Z installation. Isn't that a terrible title?
No, we're out of time. But do either of you guys have any questions at all? Like a short answer or anything? Jerry or Jane?
Yeah, I have a question. We're getting ready to publish for 2021, and we usually have a theme. I kind of have a vague theme of the Great Awakening, what's going on now in our world, but people don't have to, adhere to that. I would love to have an image of, you call it the Oracle, right? It's the Oracle.
That's the one.
Perfect.
That's the one that's downtown.
Oh, that's the, but what was the one
I was
looking at?
This one's Guidance Tower.
Guidance Tower. I would love if you're willing to have that in Artemis 2021, kind of tie in with the city, show some artwork that you're doing in Roanoke. And I think it's just so beautiful. I just love that piece, and it would be great if we could publish it.
I'd be honored. Thank you. Yeah. I'll be happy to send whatever high-res images you could pick from, it'd be great.
Okay. I'll get you our website, or maybe Doug can. We have the guidelines, but we're a nonprofit. We can't pay, but you'll get a complimentary copy. And
sure.
you get
nice.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's a great idea. And yeah, he's got a brand spanking new, beautiful website, and I can't pull it up for some reason. I think we have some kind of block against something that's not allowing me to get it here in the office. But could you tell everybody what your website is?
Yeah, it's www.sheldonstudioworks.com, just the way it spells. So Sheldon with a D, sheldonstudioworks.com, and that'll bring it up.
And I'll link it when I push this out as well. I'm not sure why it's not letting me pull it up, but yeah. Any other questions for David? All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you. This was a really enjoyable conversation. I'm a fan of the piece, and the more I learn about it, the more I love it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's great.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.